It is told that in their beginning the dwarves were made by Aule in the darkness of Middle-earth. For so greatly did Aule desire the coming of the children, to have learners to whom he could teach his lore and his crafts, that he was unwilling to await the fulfillment of the designs of Iluvatar. Hey everyone, Yoiston here, and I hope you all are doing well, wherever you are in Middle-earth. Today we are discussing the history of Aule the Smith, father of the dwarves. Helpful articles and videos will be in the description and cards. My friends, thank you all so much for joining me today. Let's begin our tale. Aule was there in the beginning, and he participated in the music of the Ainur with the other mighty spirits who came from the thought of Iluvatar. In his personality, Aule was alike to Melkor, yet different, and he was also scarce less skillful and knowledgeable. He liked to create and to devise, like Melkor, yet he did not claim ownership or hoard his creations, being free from care, and ever he passed on from work to work. Being so similar to Melkor was perhaps the reason why some of his Maiar, Mairon and Kurumo, or Sauron and Saruman, would actually fall to the teachings and designs of Melkor or Morgoth. But he did retain other Maiar, I'm sure. As we will discuss a bit later, although Aule enjoyed crafting most of all, such a passion would still come second to his submission and love for Eru Iluvatar, and the will of the other Valar. At some point early on, Aule would marry Yavanna, who would become the Valier of plants and harvest. He would be one of the first Valar to enter Middle-earth, and he would work with Manwë of the Winds and Ulmo of the Waters to fashion the world of Arda, for Aule himself held mastery over the rocks and metals of the earth. It's worth pointing out that these three, Manwë, Ulmo, and Aule, and their elements, were the three main elements in Middle-earth, and the Silmarils would find their way into each domain. Aule would create and fashion the substances of the world, being involved in the creation of some mountains and continents and the like. Yet since he and Melkor were similar, Melkor also would actually create other mountain ranges and shape the earth in his own ways, especially when the Dark Lord brought war early on in the world to the Valar. It is in these early conflicts when Mairon went and joined Melkor's side. Melkor ever sought to destroy, even as Aule sought to create and build. Melkor even turned a Maia, Ose of the Seas, to his side, who brought ruin to the land from the oceans, but by the prayer of Aule, Uinen, wife of Ose, restrained her husband and brought him to Ulmo, who pardoned him, which ended the strife between land and sea. Aule would fashion the two lamps which first lit the world, even before the two trees of Valinor, and the sun and moon, but of course, Melkor destroyed these with his power in the Elder Days. Later on in the early days of the world, Aule also built the chain of Melkor that would eventually restrain him, called Engainor. And likely after all the destruction Melkor had wrought, Aule was probably quite pleased to build this chain to restrain him. When the Valar came to settle in the lands of Valinor in the uttermost west, Aule built his mansions and would dwell there. Then in a hall under the mountains in Middle-earth, at some point later, in his lack of patience and desire to create, Aule would build the most renowned of all his creations, the dwarves. Even without the flame imperishable, that which gives true free will and life, he created the first 7 dwarves, the fathers of the dwarves who did not have true life. And Iluvatar immediately knew and questioned this, asking why Aule had done such a thing, and he even chastised him for it somewhat, but Aule instantly repented, telling of his desire to be like his father Eru and to create, for Middle-earth was wide, and its beauty should be perceived, for Aule was impatient for the children of Iluvatar to come. Aule offered the dwarves to Eru, and offered to destroy them for Iluvatar, but Eru thus gave the dwarves the flame imperishable, and he adopted them as his own children of choice, even as they were also the children of Aule. And Aule gave Eru thanks, asking for Eru's blessing on his work, and for Eru to amend it. But Eru made one demand, and wished not to reward Aule's impatience, and this was to put the dwarves to sleep until after the coming of the firstborn, the elves. And so Aule moved the 7 fathers of the dwarves to different places in Middle-earth as they slept, until such a time when Eru would awaken them as he promised to. Eventually, Aule told his wife Yavanna about all of this, having kept this a secret from the other Valar, and Yavanna thus feared for the trees, and her prayers would come to Eru, which, in turn, created the Ents to protect the forests from the dwarves and their axes. But Aule responded that the dwarves would nevertheless need wood, knowing that they would be like him, and would fashion many great things. In time, the children of Iluvatar were all awoken, and many of the elves came to Valinor. They gave Aule his name, which means invention in Quenya, yet in Sindarin he would be called Gaul, or Belagul, meaning Great Aule, or Barthon, World Artificer. Yet in Khazd-dûl he was Mahal, which meant the Maker. Some of the Noldor, who were great craftsmen, even to rival the dwarves in later days, and Feanor especially, became students and friends with Aule, and Feanor would use what he learned from him to create the Silmarils. Aule, whose mind was ever on his works and crafts, created the vessels that would hold the sun and moon after the destruction of the two trees, and perhaps he would also take part in the hallowing of the ship of Eärendil, Vingalot, to put the half-elf into the sky. Perhaps Aule also forged many weapons for the host of the Valar near the end of the First Age to help finally defeat Morgoth once and for all. As for Aule in later times, we know almost nothing. However, the dwarves believed that, when they died, they would be put in halls of Mandos set apart. It is said in their lore that they shall have a place among the children in the end, and after the last battle, the dwarves shall serve their father Aule and help him remake Arda once more. For the dwarves and their father Aule, I cannot think of a more fitting destiny, for ever their hands turned to crafting and the building of wondrous things, like the earth itself, taking it and molding it. And so we come to the end of our tale about Aule the Smith of the Valar, and father of the dwarves. From Aule we see that great skill should be tempered by humility. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed this epic character history. If you did, please be sure to hit that like button and share this with a friend. What are your thoughts on Aule the Smith? Let me know in the comments below. I like how Aule's thoughts were always turned towards building up Arda, opposite to Melkor, and even then he was humble before Eru. If you'd like to support the channel, please consider getting some candles from our friends Mythology Candles through the link in the description below, or check out our merch or Patreon. Thanks to our Valar Tier patrons, Peter Shepard, Jonathan Bootna, Mark Kralik, Blair Scott and Merton, John Hume, Sam McBee, Matt Sabach, Elizabeth Calvert, Maz Gibbs, Reese Jenkins, Adam Petrulik, Brandon Glidden, Molly Sullivan, Daniel Burns, Anthony Harmon, Dorwin Gray, Arthur Merlin, DJ Vaught, and Dale Davis. Thank you so much to all of our patrons and YouTube members. It means a lot. Please subscribe and hit that bell button to join the Men of the West and all of the free peoples today. And I'll see you all again next week with a video on the Doors of Durin and the friendship of Celebrimbor and Narvi the Dwarf. You all are the best, my friends. Thank you all so much for joining me on this adventure. Until the next one.